This is honestly a pretty easy film to review after seeing it, but during the viewing of it, I found it interesting that there's a lot of moments I was saying, yeah, there's good stuff in here. This isn't a bad movie, but is it working? Is it coming together? And thinking back, I'm like, yeah, I can think of a lot of jokes that didn't always hit, or even one or two character moments where I thought, like, oh, that was a little too direct, or that could have been fleshed out a little bit more. But this is one of those movies, I've talked about these before, where the memory of it might be stronger than the film itself. Krampus is one of those movies where every single time I see it, I'm like, this film's a little boring, and I kind of feel like they could do more with it sometimes, but every time I think back to it, I have these pleasant memories. I remember these scenes that really stand out, and it's interesting comparing that to movies. I can say, boy, I was really invested while watching this, and structurally it's very interesting, but I forget about it maybe a week later, sometimes even a few days later. So maybe at some point I should do a video or something like that, studying why that is, because thinking back to this movie, I mean, literally just a few minutes after watching it, it just got better and better the more I let it sit. And it's not something that I necessarily go back to and say, oh my God, that was hitting me on a whole other level I wasn't even thinking of. No, it's a very obvious movie. The Zootopia movies are one of the few commentary films that are very, very obvious, which I've made an argument over and over is being done too much. You can do very direct commentary, but I think we're abusing it a lot. I think there's just a little too much of it. But this is one of the few that can get away with it because it is so clever. And this one I don't think is quite as good as the first one, but there are things that do evolve, and at some points look like they're not going to evolve, like they're going to fall back on old tricks, and it's nice that they don't. But there are things in it that don't quite come together and aren't quite as strong as the first one. But at the same time, I feel like I would like to see a series of these movies continue. When I saw the first one, I didn't feel like I needed a sequel, but when they announced a sequel, I was like, all right, I can see them doing another one. There's more stuff they can touch upon with this. And now after seeing this, I do kind of think this could be kind of the new buddy cop movie series that they can do. You know, obviously it's for kids, but there's a lot of stuff that adults can enjoy in it too. And I feel like at the core of it probably are these two characters, the bunny and the fox in this, who are just very likable. They're animated in a very appealing way, and they're voiced in a very charming way. So when you have a story like this that is a mystery, but I don't know how people are going to react to it, because I did a review with Brad Jones earlier, and I was kind of bragging how literally when a character shows up, I leaned over to my wife and I said, that person did it. And I was right. I mean, immediately as soon as they introduced this character, and he was like, oh boy, I must have been tired. I totally missed that, kind of thing. So for me, the reveal of who's behind everything, and I mean everything, it gets a little complicated, but you'll see when you see it. The big reveal at the end, I'll say that, wasn't a surprise, but what was going on was interesting. I liked hearing more and more what the story is, and what we're going to find out about the history of this place. I think it's another thing that makes the movie interesting is that unlike a lot of direct commentary nowadays where one thing equals one thing, and that's it. There's no other way to interpret it, which I think is very boring. Again, you can do it, but I like commentary. If you're going to be direct, at least have it be a few different layers. The example I always point to is the first season of The Boys and the later season of The Boys, where in the first season, heroes can represent a couple things. They can represent celebrities, they can represent rock stars, they can represent authority, they can represent politicians, they can represent cops, they can represent all these things that also exist like in the comic book world. So, and what does that say about how we view celebrity and everything? It's very interesting. Where later, and granted I haven't seen this season, but everybody's just told me about it. I'm like, yeah, it just didn't sound like my thing. Like, this politician is clearly supposed to be this politician in the real world. This commercial that we're doing is supposed to be a satire of only this one commercial, and that is so boring to me. It's fine like in a sketch show or something like that. You see it on SNL or something like that. But in a whole series or a whole film, that can just get really, really tiring. So I like the fact that the commentary with this, in the first one, I definitely enjoyed how they had the whole thing about the predators and, prey, and how they interact off each other and what's the troubled history between them. And I like that because, again, you can read several things into it, certainly about, racial divide and everything, but also you ask yourself, how would I react in this situation? That's another reason I enjoy X-Men. Like, yes, it's obviously about prejudice and different types of prejudice, but you also do ask yourself, boy, if people did have these powers, how would you react? What would you recommend? What does that say about me? Or what does it say about how I should be reacting? With this one, though not as strong as the first film, there is definitely this idea about this weather machine and how the city works and why it was made and the purpose of it and what it turned into and why it turned into that way and the pros and cons that came from it. And it's one of those things where, yes, you can connect it to a few different things, but there's no one thing. We don't have a weather machine, supposedly. No. A whole bunch of conspiracy nuts are going to go fun with that. But no, there's no one weather machine or anything like that. And in this world, there is, and it's to control the climates. All these different animals can live here. And again, there's not as many as maybe the first film, but there's a couple different things you can read into that, and certainly the history of finding out more about it, which is very interesting. In terms of the humor, there are enough moments in this where I laughed pretty hard. There's also a fair amount of moments where the jokes don't land, and once in a while you'll get either a real groaner or something where you go, oh, that. There's one point where I leaned over, I said, did they literally just go, what did the fox say? And they did, but at the same time, they're trying so much, they're throwing so many darts at the board so quickly that if a joke doesn't work, in about maybe 3 or 4 jokes later, you're going to get one that's really good and really clever. There's a really... I'm surprised Disney let this pass. There's a pretty big burn at Disney in this where somebody... I think they did a version of this in the first movie where somebody's selling bootleg versions of Disney movies and they all have, like animals in them and stuff like that. And in this one, it's the guy doing the same thing, except it's with future movies coming out. It's like Tangled, the live-action remake. Like, that's one of them. Again, this goes so fast. I want to see it again so I can see all the little jokes in the background I missed. But the guy selling him is saying, we got live-action remakes, we got sequels, we got prequels. Who says we're running out of ideas? That's a pretty good burn in a sequel. So I was impressed with that. That reminded me of the Warner Brothers knock in the last Matrix movie, where they say, well, Warner Bros. Is going to make it with or without us, so we might as well be involved. Obviously saying why this movie is here and why they're involved in it. And again, I can say, well, yeah, hypocritical because you're still making this stuff and everything, but at the same time, they let it by. They let it pass. And I feel like they have to have an awareness, yeah, we know, and to some extent, they're not doing that great. In other extents, Lilo and Stitch made $1 bajillion, so yeah, it's at some level they kind of gotta go, well, you gotta play a part in this too. Go see Elio, you know what I mean? And Elio's not even a phenomenal movie, but it's good, and just nobody even gave it a chance. So it's half and half, and then some people argue, well, Disney didn't promote that enough, blah, blah, blah. The fact that joke is even in this movie, I was pretty impressed by. But outside of that, there are, like I said, a lot of jokes going on in the background, the foreground. There's some good dialogue jokes. But I'd be lying if I said there weren't a lot of moments where I said, man, that could have been punched up, that could have been funnier. There's a character in this played by Fortune Feimster, is that how you say it? I never know how to say her last name. And I really enjoy her stand-up quite a bit. I think I've seen her in one or two movies or shows, and I don't remember her being especially bad or especially good in them. I love the stand-up. She has a personality that I think would be very good for characters in film, but the way this character is written is just something I've seen to death in comedies, especially like animated comedies and family-friendly comedies, where it's the quirky person who doesn't know she's annoying, but is still trying her best and is just a little irritating, but is essential to the plot, and just gonna throw in those little one-liners where somebody rolls their eyes, or she'll just have a little catchphrase that, might be pretty lame and isn't gonna catch on. But at the same time, there are some moments that did make me laugh with her. It's not something where every single time she showed up, I'm like, oh God, this character. There's some jokes with her, like carving something out of wood. Honestly, I would have enjoyed even more of those. There's a lot of moments, I think, just visual gags you could have really gotten away with even more. And occasionally there's a line of dialogue that's pretty funny. And she does have a distinct voice. It's a voice I actually wouldn't mind hearing more in animation. But yeah, it's this type of character that does feel shoehorned in, and I feel like in the other movie, a lot of the characters work their way in pretty naturally. In fact, I'm actually very impressed with how the callbacks to other characters from the first movie are worked into this, because they do serve the plot, but they're put in a different situation where you go, oh, this will be fun to see. It isn't something where they just show the character, you go, haha, you remember that? It's something where it makes sense why that character would be there, or maybe there's a surprise with that character you weren't expecting. So again, it's a little hit and miss with that, but when it gets a good joke, they're pretty good and they're pretty clever. The big element for me, and this was a big element of the first film too, was the different places they go to. And that's why I think it makes sense to have this be a continuing series, especially sort of a buddy cop movie, is that you can go to these different places, these shady places that maybe people their kind aren't supposed to go, and you can mimic things we've ever seen in other movies or in real life. You just do it with animals, or maybe even something that's just so distinctly centered around this kind of animal that creates its own environment. I love this reptile room they go to. It just has a whole bunch of great jokes, has this great identity to it. And then there's a chase scene afterwards where they're going through these pipes, through these water pipes. And it's the chase sequences in this, the action sequences, I can't say they're always super funny, but as I kept watching them, I realized, oh, this is supposed to be like adrenaline pumping. It's supposed to kind of get your heart going a little bit. And yeah, I know they're not get killed a little bunny, they're not get killed a little fox, but you are really watching this and getting into the creativity of it and the speed of it and the editing of it. And there's a lot of moments that work that way in this. And I feel like looking back and remembering the moments that really work and stay with me and left an impact, there really is something here to the series. And again, I wasn't against making a sequel at all, but it is nice seeing that even though it's not as good as the first, there is potential for more movies. This isn't something where I'm going to say it's going to change your life or anything like that. I guess a lot of people say like the first Zootopia really changed, the way they look at a lot of things. Great. I don't think this movie is that, though there certainly are things that people will recognize as going on in the real world. But at the same time, there's just this joy to it. Everybody feels like they have a joy making this movie, and even when a joke doesn't work, you can see people pitching it in the writer's room and giggling at it, and you can just sense that overwhelming energy, the overwhelming fun that they're having making this film. Even at times where I'm sure it's insane. I'm sure making an animated film, I think everybody knows this is a lot of hard work. It's very, very painstaking to do. So the fact that that joy is coming through, honestly at all in a lot of good animated films, it is impressive. But I like I said, where even if a joke does not follow through, you really do sense that appreciation that they're able to work on this, that they're able to make this kind of movie. Even if maybe it turns out, I don't know, they were forced to or not. Like I said, they do a little bit of a knock at sequels and remakes, but I like that joy, that fun, that energy comes through. And for all I know, maybe the making of this movie was an absolute, shit show. Maybe it was awful. Maybe everybody was pulling their hair out and just going insane. But I think if that's the case, it's even more impressive that we get something where you feel a real joy and a real fun energy watching it. So, yeah, I do recommend it, certainly. I don't think it's going to be as good as the first one, but it is something where I was still invested with what was going on, the story, what was going on with the characters. There's one scene where, without going into spoilers, just something breaks.
I remember my heart really did kind of skip a beat, like, oh no, and it doesn't really affect the plot in a major way. It's not like, oh no, they're gonna die. It's just something between a couple of characters, and the reaction afterwards was very believable too. And I was like, that's such a kind of a heartbreaking moment. And I like when a moment like that can still occur in a sequel, in something where we didn't know if a sequel needed to exist, and they can still get those reactions out of us. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. I think I give it probably, let's go 3. I'll say 3 out of 4 on this. I was going back and forth between 3, 3.5, but I will say my opinion on the first Zootopia kind of changed over time, because I did think it was too obvious originally, but the more I let it sit, the more I realized it was very clever with it. So, and again with this, as I was watching, I was going, I don't know, maybe it's working. I think maybe they'll come together. And then as I just kept thinking back to it, I remember the memories of these moments I just saw, which is so funny saying memories because I just saw it, moments ago. But, when I'm just thinking back to, that really worked. That really worked. That was creative. That was fun. That was neat. Yeah, so as of now, I'll say 3. It could change over time. Maybe it could go up higher, or it could be the opposite. Man, I go back in the moments that didn't work. I'm like, man, these really don't work as well as I thought. So yeah, we'll see. But right now, I think 3 out of 4 sounds good. With that said, what did you think? Did you think this was even better than the first one, and it went to areas that it should go to and just evolve the story and the characters and the world? Or do you think it totally ripped apart what the first one was doing and Disney's just greedy and trying to get more sequels that don't need to be made? Or are you somewhere in between where you like the animation, you like the cute animals, you like the creativity around it, and you had a decent enough time? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you next time. Take care.